An excellent beef eating experience is about more than just flavor. Tenderness is a large part of it. And the American beef herd as a whole isn't all that tender.
The vast majority, if you look at a bell-shaped curve, American cattle tenderness is about a 3 to 3.5. That's where the vast majority of cattle are. You only have like 2 to 5% of the American cattle herd are tender at 10.
Is marbling enough?
We know now that marbling and beef tenderness are completely different. There's only 4 to 10% correlation between marbling and actual tenderness.
So we're talking about something different here. Just how tender is tennet tender beef?
The normal beef can be up to 38 pounds. The normal for tenant is in the 13s and 14s.
This is an exceptionally tender animal, but how accurate is the test that tells us which animals are tennet beef?
As close to 100% as a scientist can say.
And what does this mean for the bottom line of those who are able to capture this value?
Each tenant animal is worth $400 to $800 more.
We're going to discuss all that and more with my guest today, Frank Hendrix, on this episode 424 of the Working Cows podcast, brought to you by the K-Rose Company and C90 Ocean Minerals.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. It's Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag Studios. As you may hear, traveling down the road today, west of Pierre, South Dakota, my son is driving, and we are on our way to Sunshine Bible Academy for their Mega Teen Retreat. But I really wanted to get this episode to you so you had time to make plans for some of the things that we're going to discuss with my guest today, Frank Hendrix. And we're going to talk to him about his journey to finding out that there's a correlation and genetic markers that are very accurate in predicting very tender beef. And I'm really looking forward to sharing that conversation with you right after a word from our sponsor today, the K-Rose Company. Marketing your bull sale doesn't have to break the bank. At K-Rose Company, they understand the cost of traditional marketing can add up quickly. And that's why they've put together the Bull Sale Marketing Guide, a free resource designed to help you market smarter, not harder. Inside, you'll find tips on how to lower your marketing costs while reaching new buyers and maximizing your visibility. Whether you're a seasoned rancher or just getting started, this guide can help you make the most of every marketing dollar. Head to workingcows.net/424 to download your free guide today. Frank, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows podcast.
You're very welcome, Clay. I was really glad and honored to be on your Working Cows podcast and listen to you a whole bunch. And it's interesting to be on it. This is my first podcast, so if I mess up some, just let me know.
No, it'll be great. Yeah, I really appreciate some of the folks who've reached out and said, hey, this guy you want to talk to. And we're going to get there eventually, but we got to kind of document the story of how you came to be able to predict with a high degree of confidence the tenderness of beef is kind of where this all goes in the end, right?
Yes, it's a little bit of a story to get there. When we left graduate school, we went farming and ranching with my wife's my in-laws, her parents in Eastern Oregon. And in their ranch, they have cattle, sheep, and hogs, and a lot of acreage. And I was in the management there for about 12 years. And WSU came and recruited me back into faculty position at WSU. I got to take a my research projects with me, which was really a big bonus for me because I've always been a little bit research minded and a little bit out of the box thinking. When I went back to WSU as a faculty member, I took a project called the Heavy Muscled Sheep Project with me. It was one ram that had an anomaly that a certain percentage of his offspring had a 3 square inches, and of course, so the normal lamb ribeye is about 1 square inch. So it really attracted my attention. It was this rancher was in Oklahoma, Piedmont, Oklahoma, actually, and his kids were winning the carcass contests, which is a big deal in Oklahoma and Texas. Yeah, not so much up here in the Pacific Northwest, but it attracted my attention. And so I developed a Heavy Muscled Sheep Project. And some of the scientists working on it was my genetics lab was at Utah State University. Noel Cockett was there, and then U.S. Sheep Experiment Station at Du Bois, Wyoming, University of Wyoming, and Idaho, and WSU, of course. And so we started working on this, found out that it was a gene. It was really interesting. The inheritance took us a long time to figure out. Actually, me, about 9 years. It was a little bit before your laptop computers, of course. So, but what we found out, it was a maternally muffled gene. So when it came from the ram side, then it turned on. When it came from the ewe side, it was completely normal animal. And all the lambs were born normal. And about, I'd say 60 days of age, the inheritance from the ram side, they'd started looking really muscle bound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, you'd walk out and all of a sudden these lambs were just hugely muscled. That really was an interesting project. It took us a long time to figure it out. Noel Cockett's lab at Utah named it callipege, and it was a gene. And so kind of a funny scientific story here. The Noel's lab was all females in the lab and wonderful people. And of course, I had to go to Logan every once in a while and work with them. And a lot of sparring going on about being the only guy in the lab and things like that. And so the name callipege, they named it. They get to name it. The lab did. Well, it's Greek for nice rear end. It's what girls say about guys on the beach. And so it was a little bit of a joke, and I was the brunt of it. But that's what the name came from. And so, but it was really cool working with them. And we got it worked out and started working on different crosses and things. But as it turned out, about 10% of the time, the callipege lambs were tough. And unfortunately, not just a little bit tough, but they were like very tough, like a shoe. And I always thought it was a bloodline situation. But the American sheep industry asked me to quit working on it. And definitely, I did not want to hurt the American sheep industry. I was doing it to help them. And so we stopped working with sheep completely at that time, like they asked. And pretty depressing time for me, actually. But as it ended up, I gave the research to some fellow scientists, one at Stanford and one at MIT. And they work with earthworms. So genes are genes, and they actually both got a Nobel Prize for gene silencing. And so callipege ended up being the foundation block for epigenetics, which is how genes turn off and on. And the really cool thing about that was God has a plan for these things. And what happened was these new, all the cancer drugs and schizophrenia and diabetes drugs that are coming out are gene silencing drugs. and they're directly because of the cowpeas gene. I thought that was wonderful. But I moved on into cattle tenderness, and there's probably 5 or 6 things that control toughness and tenderness within muscles. And so I did some extensive study in there. About the time when I started studying it, there was a patented gene marker group called Lipton that's still being used by American Angus Society and Neogen, Zoetis, and those guys. That's the only other marker group associated with tenderness in beef. But they developed leptin is a ranking method. So they were trying to rank 1 to 10. And because of so many markers and so many SNPs, which a SNP is a single nucleotide polymorphism, those are the things we read to determine a marker. But because there's so many, it is questionable how accurate it is. At times, it's about 30% accurate. And so I started trying to find verification of other markers. And there's currently about 8,000 markers available in the cattle genome. But many of them have not been verified. And so to do anything with them, you have to kind of figure out, think through the process. How could I verify that this marker does this? And this is a little bit like Ancestry.com, hairy knuckles and stuff. But so I was able to develop a set of verification samples and then work through statistics so that they were accurate, and then started looking for markers. And I found a couple markers that are technically 100% accurate, as if you can have anything 100% accurate. Tenant is, and that's what I trademarked as tenant. So it's on a 1 to 10 scale. If you rank tenderness in beef, which we don't, it's the 10s. So that's how that came up. It took me 10 years to establish the verification group, so it takes a long time.
I just want to kind of make sure I'm understanding the story right so far. So you identify this marker for heavy muscled sheep.
Yeah.
And 1 in 10 of those is shoe leather tough.
Yep.
And so that launches you into trying to find the genetic markers for tenderness, because if there's
cattle, yeah,
right, and cattle, right. But I mean, that initial seed was, well, there's something that makes these lambs tough. Maybe there's something in genetics generally, cattle specifically, that makes them tender. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. And just trying to mark, the top level. And in these markers, we get a lot of different SNPs according to which marker you have. You can have 1,000 SNPs that you write equations for. Like if you're looking at hairy knuckles, then you just say SNP 22 and 2000 will be this. And the whole chromosome is made up of RNA, which is just 4 things. And each SNP can be, say you had an adenine thionine SNP, it can either be homozygous adenine, AA, homozygous thymine, TT, or TA or AT. And so you have to work out the verification on what's where, basically. And so that's what we did. And lo and behold, it came out really well. And we trademarked the tenant. The only kind of struggle we had at first was we realized that very few cattle in the American industry would be tenant. And so that varies between 2 and 5% of the American cattle herd were actually tenant. And the vast majority, if you look at a bell-shaped curve, American cattle tenderness is about a 3 to 3.5. That's where the vast majority of cattle are. And then luckily it really tapers off fast, so you don't have very many ones, and which are very tough. And then it tapers off. You only have like 2 to 5% of the American cattle herd are tenant at 10.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, C90 Ocean Minerals. C90 brings the power of sea energy agriculture to your farm or ranch. Using the principles discovered by Dr. Maynard Murray, C90 harnesses the power of the ocean to remineralize your soil, increase pasture nutrient density, and raise healthier livestock. C90 is perfect for all livestock and can help you unlock the genetic potential of your herd. Available nationwide at Tractor Supply. Plus, give their team a call to learn more about their new spore-based soil biological input and help take your soil fertility to the next level. Visit c-90.com or call 717-580-1458 today. C90. A wave of nutrition. Yeah. How accurate is this marker?
100%. Yeah. And as close to 100% as a scientist can say.
Right.
It just is the way it is. And when it hits all the SNPs correctly, then that's what you have. And so it really is a different paradigm to beef tenderness than we've ever known before. Well, to step back a little bit, the USDA system for beef quality, of course, was originally established in 1926, but went into effect in 1946, which revolves around marbling. We know now that marbling and beef tenderness are completely different. There's only like a 4 to 10% correlation between marbling and actual tenderness. That's why we even see Wagyu animals, Wagyu beef can be tough. So yeah, we're trying to help that industry out too.
When you're talking about the U.S. standards for beef quality, that's prime, choice, select. Is that part of what you're talking about there?
That's exactly what we're talking about, Clay. And people get paid on that day in and day out, of course, but that's quality grading.
And that's limited to marbling only, whereas you could have a well-marbled steak that was tough.
And you often do. And that's about 25% of the time, that's what we're finding out. USDA does consumer surveys every other year. And for the last 30 years, actually, the consumer surveys have, other than animal welfare and safety, the next thing is tenderness. And we see that about 25% of the time in commercially raised beef, it's just not as tender as it should be. And in the grass-fed side, about 66% of the time is what the consumer surveys are saying it's not tender. And in the grass-fed industry, they can sell all the hamburger they can produce, but the roast and the steaks have a little bit of a problem. And so that's originally what I was kind of aiming towards, is to help the grass-fed industry, but it does help the commercial industry a lot too.
And the conventional wisdom probably there would be that the grass-fed beef is less tender because of the way it was finished, that it wasn't finished properly, and if it was finished better, it would be more tender. But do you think that's an accurate assessment of the conventional thinking on it?
I'm not sure finished properly is the correct wording. It's just finished differently. And they are most time marketed right off of a pasture or something. And they do have less marbling, which most time is less flavor and can be tough. They're also a little bit younger normally than commercially raised beef.
Can you put in perspective how tender tenant beef is? I'm guessing I've eaten a lot of 3s and 4s and maybe never any 10s. I don't know, but can you put it in perspective in some way, how tender it is, or do we just have to, have those Sam's Club sample on the fork to really know the difference.
Well, soon you will have Sam's Club fork samples, but the deal is with Warner Bachelor shear, with the normal beef can be up to 38 pounds to in the 20s. And the normal for tenant is in the 13s and 14s. So there's actually a significant difference, highly significant difference between a 3 and a 7, and then again from a 7 to a tenant. So there's two correlation coefficients there, significant difference correlations. And the Warner Bachelor shear I did is outdated because now USDA has new protocols for running Warner Bachelor shear, and we're in the process of getting it done again to show that, and it will be nothing but better because now USDA makes you age the samples. So, and the samples I took were just cut and then thrown in the freezer until I could run the Warner Bachelor shear. And so no aging whatsoever. So the numbers are a little bit high across the board, but they will have those numbers before very long. So,
are there populations within the United States or maybe the world beef herd that you have noticed consistently outperform others?
Yeah, this brings me to, so let me back up a little bit. So I was trying to boost up our business, get going when we started in February 2024. My son and I run the business. It's a 2-horse show right now. So we went to AI companies, the top 3, and asked to evaluate their semen sire, their sire directories, and all 3 agreed, and we did find only about 2%. So none of the 3 were interested in tenant because they were saying if they put a tenant logo on like a bull A, and then all the rest of the bulls don't have it, they're going to be swamped with people wanting bull A. And so they just basically said, yeah, we're not going to sign on with you right now. But I have never met Kit Farrow before halfway through 2024 that I was reading his newsletter. And some of the things he was saying really struck a chord with me. Have the same ideas on some things. And so I emailed Kit and asked to do his sire catalog. And actually, I had to bug him about 4 times. He'll tell you that I really have a habit of bugging people. But eventually he said, yeah, let's do it. And so I ran his, and 67% of his bulls came out to be tenant, which was a shock to my son Biff and I. And we ran it twice to make sure we hadn't messed up somewhere. And then, contacted him, and he was thinking, okay, if, 5 or 10 bulls came across as tenant, he's not going to do it, because just the same example as the other AI companies. Well, he was flabbergasted, and we still are, but it was kind of a God thing matching us up, because in my mind, he's been selecting for metabolizable energy levels for this last 40 years. And what we saw, cattle with that are easy keepers ended up being more tenant. So we started working together, and a lot of his cattle are over 60%. His cows are, and he has a group of cooperating producers, really nice group of fellas, or ranchers, I should say, that I think there's over 30. And lo and behold, they are over 50% also. To add to that, in looking at the data, Red Angus, for some reason, have a little bit higher level. They're a new breed, and 1903 is new, and one or two of their foundational sires must have been tenant, because they do have in the 18 to 20% range that are tenant. And then South Pole, which is also a breed that has been developed for easy keeping or metabolizable energy, has a great number too, probably about 50%, what we're seeing, which is very exciting. So
metabolizable energy is another way of saying easy keeping, basically, because it's the animal's ability to extract nutrients from whatever they're eating. Is that right?
correct. Yeah. And it's like my own cows, I used to lease them out to fellows that went on corn stalks for the winter. And when we pulled them out of corn stalks, my cows came out like they were at a buffet for the whole winter. And these guys' cows came out looking like hat racks, and that's what easy keeping is. And so by what Kit's been doing, or wintering them on forages and things like that, has emphasized metabolizable energy or easy keeping. And the South Pole has done the same thing. They have a large percentage of cattle. In fact, Kit just rewrote his AI sire catalog, and this is a 2025 one, hot off the press, and you'll see a large number of them have the tenant logo on them now. And so they are into it, and we're partners now working with them to help the industry. And that's the whole reason we got into it, is to help the industry and the producers make money, because this is a value added thing. Ag economics guys are telling me, and I don't know how they got this now, Clay. So they're saying that each tenant animal is worth $400 to $800 more as a carcass. And in these high prices, now is the time to be switching to something that is value added, if you can, because sooner or later the market, the cycle is going to start rolling again. And if you have a bunch of tenant cows, young cows especially, you're going to have an advantage over big cows that are normally threes and fours.
Do you have any idea what the mechanism is that causes one breed or one producer's animals? I know selecting for easy keeping is a big part of it, right? But is that kind of one of the strongest ways to correlate these things?
That's all I can figure out, because when I look back, some of the Wagyu is having trouble right now, and we're helping them also. But when Wagyu was developed, it's a Japanese breed, the Colby breed, brought in straw as a semen. But then because they're small and pretty light muscled, actually, they were crossed into basically the biggest, growthiest Black Angus cattle they could find. And we've done a lot of Wagyu bulls now through the tenant tests, and we still haven't found one that's tenant. So in looking at what Kit has done over 40 years, and then how the American Wagyu was put together, that's all I can correlate it to. I don't have any statistics on that by any means, but that's just my belief in my head right now.
How does say we've got grass finishers listening, we've got seed stock producers listening, and they want to start to market, tenant bulls, or they want to start to market people, they want to start marketing their beef as exceptionally tender, tenant, certified. How do they go about improving their herd to get to the point where their herd will pass the test?
Excellent question. We have a website at tenantbeef.com that explains how that can be done. We've developed DNA testing protocol. I mean, blood card testing protocol. This is one of them. In it, all you do is put 3 or 4 drops of blood in the circle, mail it back to us, and then we sequence it. We extract the DNA and sequence it, and then we contact you via email with a yes or no. And we also work with tissue samples also. And so when I was doing verification samples, we didn't have tissue samples. They weren't invented yet.
Mm.
And so all the work was with blood cards, and that's why we use those. But actually, tissue samples work really, really well now. That's how to do it. Or you can go to, Feral Cattle Company's AI sire directory and choose some sires that are tenant. Our website is going to have a area that can be clicked on. So in the future, that we can go to all the tenant AI sires that we know of. There's one other one in Central Washington. It's a Red Angus, really nice bull, owned by the Card Ranch. But that one, and then all the ones in the Faro catalog, are the only ones that are currently available. And
Sure.
So that's how you do it. And the website will walk you right through how to do it.
And I appreciate the process there too. But how would somebody who has a herd, I mean, buying genetics that are certified tenant is going to be one way, right?
Yeah.
What else? What are some of the other things? Like you said that your cows come home fat, the other ones not as much. What are some of the ways that people can go about starting that process? I mean, sending in the tests, getting the results back, right? And then are we selecting those animals? That's becomes another selection criteria that we're using to choose which animals stay, which animals go. Is that kind of the way to continually increase the tenderness score in our herds?
Tenant is moderately or highly inherited. So you can go from a normal cow in 2 generations, your whole herd can be tenant. It's what we've seen. And so it would be really important to probably at least check all your heifers you're thinking about retaining, because then you could just get one tenant bull or AI once, and you would have tenant animals. If you breed and continue to breed those, of course, to tenant bulls, then you would purify your herd into a herd, and that's what a lot of producers are doing. A lot of producers, when they found out that they do have tenant, end up checking all their cows, and we're getting large groups of producers that are sending in large number of samples just to see once they've. And I understand skeptics, and that's good. I like skepticism, but as soon as they either try tenant or see the data, they are sold, and that's even better when a skeptic is now sold, because then they're all on board. So, and that's what I like to see. So
yeah, generally those skeptics, when they're finally convinced, they become an evangelist.
Yes, and that's what we're seeing each day. We're getting more and more evangelistic people when it comes to tenant. So, and that's really wonderful. So,
are you seeing? I mean, you were kind of closely involved with Kit Farrow and some of those things. Are you seeing a lot of people that have been under his influence and been using his selection criteria starting to get their cattle tested?
All of them, all the CPs or cooperating producers have jumped on board and are doing theirs. And I know in the future, like the bull sales that are coming up for kit in April here, we'll have a large number of our tenants, but even the non-tenant bulls are probably very close to being tenant.
Right.
And so what we're seeing with those bulls that would be ranked 8 and 9 that aren't tenant are throwing some tenant calves. And so it goes along with what, the whole bloodline situation with kid is. And yeah, those bull sales are coming up in April. I'm speaking at all of them. One's April 1st in Texas, and one's April 4th in Missouri, and then the 14th is Colorado. And I think you can go on the Faro Cattle Company website to get those dates and things. And actually, he just got this bull catalog of all the bulls that'll be on sale there, and a huge percentage are tenant animals. So
Sure. And so you haven't yet spoken to kind of the groups that are gathering for the bull sales there.
no, I have not yet.
I see. Okay.
I'll be the day before the sale. I'll be speaking, and it's quite humbling. I get a lot of calls, like a couple producers from Oklahoma said, "We're bringing a bus to Texas. Are you sure you're going to speak there?" And I said, "Yeah, but the food truck's going to have to up their game, I think, a little bit in some of these because there are going to be a lot of people there, and rightfully so." So
sure. Yeah. Well, this will be out right before that, so should be able to, if you're listening to this in the first couple of days after it released, you should be able to go and catch that. Or I don't know. Sometimes I think those talks at the sales are videoed and put up later, so you can see that as well. So give people the opportunity to check some of those things out. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the crux of my question. My curiosity is around, everybody can improve their herd. And one way to do it is to select the easy keeping animals and just continue to challenge them and find them. And maybe the faster way to do it is to find some of these, and I'm imagining more and more tenant certified seed stock producers, and to bring their seed stock into your herd as well.
yes, and I wanted to back up a little bit. The reason why I was trying to do this with grass fed originally is because currently the large carcasses right now, they're actually at 220 days on feed in some cases, and the choice and prime really aren't needed. And so my thinking was, for an animal welfare point of view, not having cattle in feedlots as long or at all or as long is a good deal. And then not having to feed them up to the choice and high prime length of time is also a good deal. But then looking at even the manure that's produced by one animal at 220 days, that is really significant. And environmentally, it's a lot better to have the ability to have tenant. And I'm not against feeding tenant animals, up into the choice range, but definitely the 220-day feeding period really isn't needed in a confined area. I wanted to tell you, we had a cutout last week, and I can't name the company it was against, okay, but it's a contest. And it was a well-known, probably world leader in value-added marketing. You buy steaks in the mail, and they come around Christmas time. So it was a really big deal. And they brought in a carcass. It was prime marbling. It had been on feed for 230 days. Plus, it was 45-day wet aged. And I guess this is normal, what they do to get a superior product. Ours came right off of forage, no age at all, and it was a high select or really low prime animal, and we won.
Mm.
And that really turned some heads. We're going to be doing a large number of cutouts over this last month. Tim Goodnight is handling this for us, and that made some people some believers there, and it will continue to do that. And so we're really excited about this. But again, it's a paradigm shift in the cattle industry. And so we do have some skeptics out there, but we're bound and determined to change everybody. So
I think if you think about the pleasurable eating experience of a steak, I think that the range of flavor is probably not as wide as the range of toughness.
Right. You're right.
And so so I think that there's probably more gains to be had in the eating pleasure, or the how good that experience is in upping our tenderness more than upping our flavor. Would you agree with that?
Agreed. Yeah, even a select graded animal has marbling and it has the beef flavor. Just don't need as much as a high prime or Wagyu to get the same flavor. It's in there. It's a good product, and God made cows to graze, as far as I'm concerned, and longer I can keep them grazing and have a good product, I'm happy to do it. So
yeah, well, and isn't God good?
Yeah,
that the animals that are the most tender are also the ones that are easy keeping, which means the ones that won't break the bank to keep them alive and get them to be finished and edible.
Yeah, and it's kind of the natural process. Even with bison in the past, on hard winters, it'd be the easy keepers that would be the ones calving, and the ones that aren't easy keepers would be the ones dying in the ravine somewhere. So it's kind of a natural process if you think about it. So
Yep, for sure. So we've covered a lot of ground. We've covered many years and maybe decades of your life trying to find these correlations. Are there other pieces of this that really need to be included here?
Probably just that it's a small company. We just started in 2024. We are two-man outfit, family, and been in the cattle industry my whole life. I actually, when I was trying to work my way through college, I had a VOAG instructor talk to my dad and said, "Hey, Frank has to learn something to work his way through college." So I sheared sheep through college in Arizona, believe it or not. That's crippling, but I used to be tough. But it's wonderful to be on the cutting edge of this, and our goal is to help American beef producers be more profitable. So,
yeah, very good. Well, I think we've kind of documented the process. If people are interested in it, they can check out the show notes page for today and find links to tenetbeef.com. And that is spelled TENET, beef.com. And they can find right there on the website the link to certify their herd and go down that path.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, Clay, to speak with you. You have a wonderful podcast. Yeah, this is my first, and and glad it was you to be able to be on the air with.
Well,
so.
Yeah, hat tip to Steve Campbell and Kit for directing you my way. So I was glad they did it, and it was a very, very fascinating conversation. Thank you for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Very good stuff there with Frank. Really appreciate his perspective and the work that he's done to find this tender beef, and his passion to really enhance the profitability of ranches. And I just think there's so much potential here for people marketing their most tender beef directly to customers and restaurants, and grass-finished beef and grass-finished producers who can find those animals that are going to be tender, kind of regardless of whether or not they have been fed a bunch of extra inputs. They can be tender right off forage, right off grass. So very, very powerful stuff there. Really appreciate Frank and his willingness to communicate those issues. Coming up next on the Working Cows podcast, I'll be sharing a conversation that I had with Vance Crowe. Vance has been doing some great work with the legacy interviews that he's been doing. I know some of you have actually taken advantage of that over the years, so really great work that he's been doing to capture people's life stories in a way that is very high quality and in a way that unearths new information that maybe the families didn't even know before. And I'm going to talk to him on this upcoming episode about ways that his perspective has changed and the ways that these interviews have changed him and impacted him. So look forward to sharing that with you coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.